So in this video, we're going to talk about how to actually desexualize your brain. If you've been watching porn for any amount of time, you've most likely come across this topic before. And the concept is effectively saying that you have been excessively stimulated by abnormal sources of pleasure, and so you must reset your brain back to factory settings in order to get to a place where you can actually stop watching porn. And people will desexualize their brain plenty of different ways. So in this video, we're going to talk about the ways that don't work, and we're going to talk about how to actually desexualize your brain so that you can stop watching porn for good. By the way, my name's Tolu. I'm a former addict who is now a new creation in Christ. I'm also a certified sex addiction recovery coach. I'm the founder of the #1 community on school for Christians who want to quit porn, and I am a recovery lead at my church's recovery ministry. So let's begin. One of the interesting things I've observed with people who struggle with porn is that they're usually very intelligent people who have mastered careers, they have mastered fitnesses, they have mastered their finances. So the idea of being mastered by something can often lead them to feel like a walking contradiction. And that's why this idea of desexualizing your brain can feel so powerful, because it appeals to the ego in two specific ways. The first is it gives you a moral out for what you are feeling and allows you to then blame biology, right? You can blame your brain, or specifically blame Elon Musk, blame Zuckerberg, blame whoever for creating these abnormal sources of stimulus that promote your brain with so much excessive dopamine that is it really your fault that you can't help but watching porn because you're desensitized to the less excessive forms of pleasure that all of a sudden a more excessive form like pornography is just the inevitable conclusion of a mind that needs stimulants. It kind of makes sense, but the problem with that is that it's leading you to believe that you have a mind problem, not the heart problem. And we know what scripture says: the heart is deceivingly wicked above all things, who can trust it? But the second reason why the concept of desexualizing your brain can feel so appealing to someone who feels like they are a walking contradiction is because it just offers this illusion of a factory reset. You can just get your brain to go back to zero. And how appealing is that, that all of a sudden you get a chance to go back to a period that you were before you watch porn, and then you can make the adjustments so that you get the benefit of the mastery that you've had in your life, but you don't have to deal with the problem of pornography anymore. But there's a spiritual and a practical paradox to it, because at its core, the reason why you are watching porn is because you don't know how to manage your cravings, right? No cravings, no porn. With cravings, you then watch porn. And so desexualizing your brain and going through dopamine detoxes and any things like that require you to get to an endpoint of where you have no cravings. But to get to an endpoint where you have no cravings, you first have to walk through the valley of having cravings. And this is where the paradox occurs. Because if you can't manage your cravings now, how will you get to that endpoint? Right? Because typically what you're doing with a dopamine detox or any type of desexualizing your brain activity is you are doing a series of activities in your spare time or whatever, making a daily routine of doing these activities. And the hope is that as you continue to do these activities, your dopamine will decrease, or I guess your threshold for dopamine will decrease. And as your threshold for dopamine decreases, so do your cravings. And eventually you then get to an endpoint where you don't need to watch porn anymore because you've successfully eliminated your cravings. But there's just the problem of how do you actually manage your cravings? Because if you relapse while you're doing these exercises, guess what? You've just restarted the cycle all over again. And so you know that if you can just make it through your cravings, you'll get to a place of no cravings. The belief is that if I stop watching porn long enough, the cravings will evaporate and I will be porn free. But it leads back to the same problem. How do you stop watching porn and manage your cravings when you haven't been able to manage your cravings to begin with? So the idea of going through a complete factory mental reset in order to get to a place of not watching porn is appealing, but fundamentally it's misleading because you are trying to address a mind problem and you have yet to address the heart problem. And do you see how that can all of a sudden become confusing for someone like you who is successful, who is intelligent, who has done a lot of great things in their life, but you still can't figure out why you are mastered by something? And it's kind of holding on to this hope of, if I can just retweak my mind to think the way I need it to, I will stop watching porn. But the problem is you have to get past the cravings. So let's talk about it. There's a verse in the Bible that I just love. It says that if a man strives for masteries, yet is he not crowned, except he strives by guessing? No. Except he strives by wishing? No. Except he strives lawfully. The emphasis here is that there is a path to victory if you are trying to accomplish a specific objective. And until you figure out what that path is, you will continue walking in a direction that is not consistent with your objective. There's a reason why you measure twice, but you cut once. There's a reason why the planning stage of building a house takes a lot longer than the actual execution of it. There is a path to victory, and it is more beneficial to identify that path than to just start walking blindly, hoping that one day you get there. The point I'm making is that an excellent strategy will increase the chances of success when the idea is horrible. However, a horrible strategy will decrease the chances of success even if the idea is excellent. The strategy matters more than the actual idea. And if your strategy is to enter a period of abstinence and perform neurological activities, prayer, warriors, confession, whatever it is that you think is the right thing to do, and you continue to relapse, then it means you need to stop because you are not walking down the right path. The path to getting porn free has to go through cravings. This is the most important part of the video right here, okay? If you want to successfully desexualize your mind, you must first manage your cravings. So, what is a craving? Now, in the context of porn, I define a craving as the psychological tension that occurs as a result of loss aversion. What is loss aversion? Loss aversion is increased desire that occurs when you have to give up something that you consider to be beneficial. It's the reason why you're still obsessed with that girl that dumped you back in high school. It's the reason why if I told you that you had to give up sugar, it would actually increase your desire for sugar. Why? Because when we have to give up something that we consider beneficial, we don't like to do that. And there's a part of us that fights that and holds on to it. So this means that if you consider porn to be beneficial for you, you will continue to have cravings whenever you feel the absence of that benefit that porn provides. Put simply, no benefit, no cravings. If benefit, then there is a craving. This means that the question should not necessarily be, how do I stop watching porn? The question should be, how do I expose the benefit that I believe that porn is providing so that I can reduce the benefit? Because when the benefit goes away, there is nothing to be desired. Therefore, when there's no benefit, there is no desire, which means there is what? No craving. There's a challenge that occurs with trying to expose the lie that you believe about the benefit that porn provides. And the challenge fundamentally is this, okay? As humans, we have a weakness where we tend to overestimate our intelligence. I feel like I should call this the Pinocchio deception because we think we're like Pinocchio, right? We think that as we lie and deceive others, we will see our nose grow in real time, thus giving us the ability to autocorrect the lies in real time, like some type of superhuman machine. And therefore, we will be able to see our lies. But the problem with that is the reality is we're not like Pinocchio. We're actually like someone who's been wearing rose-colored glasses. We don't see the glasses, we see the world through the glasses. So you don't actually see your nose grow, you see the world through the lies that you have developed. You don't see the benefit that you believe porn is giving you, you see the world through the benefit. This means that even though you may be able to see the logical fallacies that others have, it's really hard to see it for yourself. There's a reason why top doctors and surgeons don't operate on themselves, regardless of the skills that they have, because of this natural weakness that we have as humans, where we just don't know how to break out of the same prison that we created for ourselves. I'll give you a good example. So I was doing some coaching work the other day with someone who is really successful, a good friend of mine, beautiful children, beautiful wife, cannot stop watching porn. So I asked him the question, why do you think you're watching porn? And he told me that he was stressed, and I challenged that. And I said, I don't believe that you're watching porn because you're stressed. And, I've started some back and forth. He started to get a little angry, and that's good because usually when I work with people, that anger lets me know that your subconscious is now really holding on to this lie that you've internalized as truth. And what we got to was the truth is that he wasn't watching porn because he was stressed, because he knew that inevitably, and this is his words, not mine, he was going to lose everything, his career, his respect, his family, his children, his wife, because of his habit of watching porn. Yet, when you asked him, or when I asked him, why do you not stop watching porn? It was clear that if that happened, then at least he could blame porn. But what he was actually afraid of was stopping porn and still losing everything, right? He had a fear of failure. He was afraid of failing in his career, failing in his marriage, and failing as a father. And if he failed all of that stuff without watching porn, then he wouldn't have any excuse other than himself. And this is petrifying, right? How do you come to that realization on your own unless you have someone there to challenge your beliefs? And eventually, we know we did some work by basically doing kind of I guess, a cost benefit analysis to show him why he was misattributing porn as the relief when porn was actually the cause, blah, blah, blah. But the point being that before he can even think about desexualizing his brain and going through all sorts of neuroscience and neurological activities and whatnot, he was always going to watch porn as long as he believed that porn was protecting him from himself. That is a difficult thing to come to terms with. So I usually always 1000% 10 toes down say, if you are trying to figure out a way to eliminate your cravings so that you can then eliminate your usage of porn, you need to seek knowledge. You need to seek wisdom. You have to understand why you watch porn, because if you think that you are watching porn because you're bored, you're wrong. If you think you're watching it because you're stressed, you're wrong. If you think you're watching it because you're tired, if you think you're watching it because you're horny, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. And that might be a difficult thing for you to come to terms with, because this whole time you've spent this life believing that these are the reasons you watch porn. But if they were the reasons you watch porn, then wouldn't it be that difficult to just figure out a strategy against it? Remember, if a man strives for masteries, yet he is not crowned except he strives lawfully. So if you're doing this objective of trying to eliminate yourself from watching porn and you're still struggling with it, you're not doing it the right way. Seek help. And I think help starts by looking at wisdom. So if you're watching this video, good for you. You're doing the right thing, because someone has probably already explained it better than I can, better than you can. And the answer is out there. You just need to find it. There's a couple ways you can do so. You can continue watching YouTube videos. You can read books. You can join my community. Actually, I would encourage you to join my community on School. Everyone who joins, I make them a custom video explaining why you watch porn. Usually I can get within like an 85% accuracy of at least deconstructing the truth. I'm happy to do the same thing for you. Join, the link will be in my bio. Or you can just DM me. If you need one-on-one work like I did with my friend, we can get you to a place where you don't watch porn a lot faster than it'll take for you on your own. Especially if you're someone who has a career or something that you need to lose. You don't have the time to wait until you come across that video where someone says that thing that helps it click for you. That could take years, right? If you're someone who has built a life and a reputation that you can't afford to lose to a private habit, DM me. We can get to work at some point when we figure out a time that works. But the point that I'm making is that if you want to actually desexualize your brain, the very last thing that you should be doing is trying to fix your mind because you believe that you are excessively stimulated by abnormal sources of pleasure. While that may be true, in order to get to that place of not watching porn, you have to get to the place where you don't have cravings. And you cannot get there unless you actually know how to get through that in-between wilderness phase of managing your cravings. Eliminate the absence of benefits and the cravings will go away. Continue believing that there is a benefit and the craving will always remain.